This game was played and reviewed on a PlayStation 5. I just had to say that. The fabulous Phantom Thieves strike back in Persona 5 Strikers, a crossover follow-up to one of the greatest games of all time that we very much wanted, did not expect to get, and probably don't deserve.
I do.
Whether or not it serves as a sequel, spin-off, or something of a DLC is a matter of perspective. What is obvious, however, is that Strikers is a worthy entry in the beloved series that makes delicate use of the finest, most heartwarming characters crafted in modern gaming to tell another meaningful story and entice us with an innovative combat system, a smashing mashup of hack-and-slash fundamentals with a dashingly strategic turn-based party system of the Persona brand. Of course, the main anchor is still the story, an endearing affair welcoming the return of the phenomenal ensemble, as well as newcomers like the adorable, childlike AI Sophia, and the sardonically cynical, grown-up crime fighter Zenkichi. In so many moments, Strikers strikes a chord. The narrative journey is a cornucopia of emotions, an important touchstone for how we view ourselves, our friendships, and the concept of humanity itself.
I got it. I understand another emotion.
The gameplay is also quite badass.
Do you care to join us?
That's a lot to offer for a video game. In Persona 5 Strikers' story, much like its predecessor, you can expect the unexpected.
Whoa! For real? Huh? Whoa!
On the surface, the story and its characters are as fun and playful as any.
Hey! You taught me what it means to live! To be myself!
Its depths reach deep into the heart of the human condition. If you play the main game, you immediately experience nostalgia and feel uplifted upon returning to your second home of Shibuya, donning your mask and calling on your persona. New players will similarly find themselves transported, inescapably entranced by the world of sights, sounds, and feels of this multi-dimensional Technicolor anime. Either way, there is an old and familiar story here that's told to us in a new way, with plenty of nuance in the new cast members as they seek to better understand their duties and their roles as individuals as they unlock their true potential. Plot is driven literally by a road trip, taking us on an adventure across Japan to explore its culture, cuisine, and to solve mysteries the way only the teenage vigilantes can. Much of the proven formula for effecting change on wrongdoers remains the same, with the heroes not seeking to make anyone change directly, but rather by showing them the error of their ways. Only a few years since the original game, the script is updated with many current cultural references and is full of genuinely funny laugh-out-loud moments with great comic timing. In the little moments aside, time is taken to give attention to the intricacies of each character so they can express their insights. In the bigger picture, the game asks the player to confront philosophical questions about qualities attributable to humans, like compassion and empathy and the feeling of warmth that they provide. Many parallels are made as past events are referenced and new clues are revealed to us little by little. And like a good sleuth, you have to pay attention to details both big and small if you want to appreciate the intensity and intelligence of the main reveal. This game understands its audience and trusts their intuition to find relevance in a message that should have importance for players of all ages. That happiness is only real when shared. Persona 5 Strikers is powerful in its moral about the fight for good, the bond of friendship, and the greatness achieved through togetherness. Throughout the game, the message is consistent about the importance of caring for others, and this point is driven home by none other than the AI character Sophia, whose sole use for existing is to be humanity's companion, despite being created as merely a program for heuristic analysis, and as such is considered to be incapable of comprehending the very meaning of this concept at first.
In exchange, You lend a hand to the
Sophie desires to understand human behavior and to be accepted by people, even though it is perceived that human emotions aren't applicable to a being such as herself, as she isn't a real person. We find ourselves caring for Sophie all the same, even in her capacity as an AI, as we do the rest of the characters, having an attachment to them even with the conscious knowledge that they themselves aren't real either. These characters are all precious, maybe because they remind us of ourselves, though they are a great deal more forthright in their convictions than most of us could hope to be. They are identifiable and affable, and they make us want to be better. This is the power of video games and great storytelling in general. If Persona 5 Strikers lacks the finality the original game offered, as well as Persona 5 Royal, this is partly because many of the lives have already been explored, their personalities manifested, their identities consolidated, shaped by their past events and the personal discoveries they made together. These characters learn as much from each other as we do from them. Though the story isn't nearly as complex as Persona 5 Royal, nor is the exposition as enthralling, especially considering that many themes and stylistic elements of the story are borrowed from the originality of Persona 5 Royal, there is still something awesome here. The finale has a last surprise that is incredibly bittersweet and almost as perfect as the ending of the original game. In Persona 5 Strikers, combat is the frenetic fusion of action game elements with those of the turn-based dynamic, though with fewer ties to the traditional RPG grinding mechanics, and with a reeled-in focus on freelancing through the world, with a preference on always keeping the player in or near the action. On the screen, there is a lot going on all the time, and the repertoire is often strikingly colorful, stylish, and cinematic in a way that only video games can achieve by unabashedly glorifying the over-the-top. You are granted access to 9 distinct party members, each with their own special moves and techniques, abilities, and aesthetics. You have up to 4 at your disposal, but you can only select one at a time to play as, while the other 3 maintain a fair bit of reliable autonomy as AI. You still have to watch out for them and do your best to keep them alive so that they can do the same for you. Utilizing personas and melee and gun attack combos, you prioritize finding the enemy's weaknesses and exploiting them. Simply spamming those attacks and attempting to brute force by pressing the same button patterns repeatedly won't do much, as those actions have limitations, such as the amount of SP you have to activate them, meaning that successfully micromanaging tougher encounters has not only a knowledge-based requirement through the memorization of conflicting affinities, but also a skill-based component in that you build your party in a variety of ways according to your needs and wants for each engagement. And the fact is that here, the combat is never touch and go, as you take on hordes in real time and in 60 FPS, with a lessened reliance on RNG and a greater emphasis on bringing creativity and chaos into battle. You can still occasionally slow down time by switching personas on the fly, baton passing to another party member to take over control of them and add more flair to the combo train, and use certain special attacks which pause the action. All of this gives you an advantage and some more time to plan your next move. This blend of styles is almost like a new type of game entirely. It's not easy to compare them separately or make a case for one over the other, but blended together, the action elements and the turn-based elements complement each other and work nicely. As far as exploration is concerned, you get to travel to 4 new cities and navigate 8 jails, dungeons that house new enemy types and bosses within. Each new area of the game is a charming and detailed replica of its real-life counterpart, allowing you to freely explore the little slices of Japan's great city centers and brush up on a bit of old history mixed with modern. Upon visiting the different locations, you'll be greeted by a lifelike atmosphere of cultural exhibits that makes you wish you could be there in the flesh. And you'll hear a great soundtrack that keeps you upbeat as you embark on side adventures and complete requests for your team, and stock up on specialty items exclusive to certain locations for tackling the monarchs that reside in the battlegrounds of the jails. Some of the highlights include the wide streets and bright lights of the decorative Sapporo, the sunny beachfront of Okinawa, and the coveted food courts and shopping centers of Osaka. You can only visit these once, so use your time wisely and take in your surroundings. Inside the jail is where you'll spend most of your time, with a convenient ability to fast travel from one to the next at any time during or after the story. In this sense, there is some added replay value knowing that you can return to the settings to complete activities at your own discretion, challenge bosses a second or third time on the harder difficulty, and fight secret enemies. Though each individual jail has a lackluster level design compared to the palaces of Persona 5 Royal. They seem shorter in length and smaller in imagination, without the same level of ingenuity of puzzle solving, enemy variety, and the quality of the story developments found in that game. One jail may look different from the next, but they all mostly play the same, and some of them seem lifted straight from Persona 5, but with a much simpler implementation. In this aspect, Persona 5 is far superior. Strikers has a great design, but a game like Persona 5 Royal shows us that there are levels to this, so to speak. There aren't nearly as many quest lines or optional conversations available, though what activities are there remain functional and aid you in battle. Some of the notable mechanics from Persona 5 are missing entirely, like romancing your confidants or ranking them up to unlock bonuses. Other components are unlocked automatically without the need to prioritize building your character or focusing on preparation by completing day-to-day tasks in-game. There are only about half of the personas playable in this game, and there are key features absent regarding building and strengthening them. You can still level them up, learn new moves, and upgrade their stats, but they retain their weaknesses that they start out with, meaning you're pretty much stuck with what the game gives you, though it could be argued this is to provide more balance. You can relearn moves that would normally be lost by passing them up, but your party members never evolve their personas and only gain access to some of the abilities they previously had from Persona 5 Royal. There is a shortened runtime in this game, but there's still a solid amount of about 50 to 80 hours of main game and optional content before starting New Game Plus, in which you can carry most of your unlocks over and experience a great leap in difficulty should you choose. Like Persona 5 Royal, this game is worth the time invested and deserves a second playthrough at some point. There must always be something said for the mood that music brings out, and the vital, singular influence it has in orchestrating our emotions and creating the right atmosphere for those emotions to play out properly in spontaneity. The synthesis of sight and sound is, thus, the peak form of artistic expression, and no great film in the era of sound has failed to benefit from the reinforcement of music. Video games are no different. One of the great powers that Persona 5 and Persona 5 Strikers bestows is the power of stirring up emotions through the infectious energy of its rhythmic original soundtrack, starring the omnipresent voice of the one and only Lynn, one of the best singers in the world, who is not simply talented vocally across two languages, but truly confident in her ability and the belief of what her music represents. Both of these are essential hallmarks of a great singer. It must be an honor for her to preside over such an eclectic soundtrack as the main force behind the music, the soul of the game, and what an honor for us to hear it. Like the games and the Phantom Thieves, the music is always inventive and righteous, inspiring great optimism. Here in Persona 5 Strikers, we get some of the great nostalgic tracks from Persona 5 on loop, used sparingly but to great effect, as well as some new music that I can't stop listening to that is of the same caliber and sure to continue the legacy of the music catalog of the composers and this great singer. It will be perhaps iconic. As of now, it is surely one of the great soundtracks of all time in a game. In and of itself, Persona 5 Strikers doesn't match the revelation that was Persona 5 Royal in its size or in its scope, discarding many of the innovative RPG elements and, save for Sophia and Zenkichi, the character developments that made that game magical, though its core identity, much of which is borrowed heavily from the earlier effort, is mostly unchanged, which is, perhaps, what we wanted most anyway. Strikers does build on the themes of Persona 5 and does well to approximate the level of sophistication in storytelling, while expanding some key aspects of the combat system and excluding others to create a game that is very similar in style yet different enough in substance to be viewed as its own product. A game with production values this polished can't help but be a 9 out of 10. A great game, astonishing, extravagant, and exceptional. Like all Persona fans and fans of great games in general, I'm looking forward to Persona 6. But in the meantime, we can enjoy and be thankful for the work that Koei Tecmo and Atlus done in making and delivering Persona 5 Strikers.